Hello everyone, Stjepan here. I'm going to show you the last game I played in the Croatian League. Well, I can only say that I was pretty devastated after this game, not because I lost, but because I had no idea how bad my idea was, which I played in this game. How bad the move I chose was after about 15 or 20 minutes of calculating every single possibility. I just was completely blind. I didn't see what the consequences were. And firstly, congratulations to my opponent. He was a gentleman, and he was a much better player that game, even though he's lower rated than I am. He opened with pawn to d4, I played d5, bishop to f4, and I usually play bishop to f5 when people try the Mason attack or try to enter the London system. But here he chose c4, and I played c6. And now the worst thing is that one thing I'm afraid of in d4 openings is the attack on the queenside with queen to b3, queen b6, c4 takes, and then he has double pawns on the b file and opens up my queenside. That's exactly what happened this game. And since I couldn't find any games of his online, I couldn't prepare for him specifically, so I chose to improve some of my weaknesses against, with the black pieces, and that was one of them. And I found an attacking plan. I worked on an attacking plan, which I actually got to play in the game, and still I got crushed in the middle game. So anyway, c6, knight to c3, e6, creating a pawn triangle, and now queen to b3. Now, of course, I could play b6 and avoid all of that, but I just didn't want to do that because I was preparing for that specifically, and I was actually happy that that happened because I was finally prepared for that sort of attack. So now queen b6, c5, queen takes b3, a takes b3. Now the problem is that he is going to play b4, b5, and then weaken my c6 pawn, and then after that he's going to play b4, b5 once again and open up my position. I can never play a6 because my rooks are not connected yet, so if the pawn is here, I can never take because my rook is hanging, and that's a common pattern in these openings. And now I got to play the idea that I was training, which I was preparing for the day before. So now knight to d7 first, b4, and now f6. And I'm going to analyze the game afterwards with an engine. I didn't do a detailed analysis myself, even though the game was 2 days ago. So I'm going to see where I went wrong. But for this position, I know that black is only slightly worse. It's almost equal, and I'm actually about to equalize. And now it's tough for him to play b5 here because I'm going to play e5. So with b5, e5, and I'm actually going to stand slightly better in that position. b5 doesn't work. So first he played f3, but this is the idea I had, and I'm just going to force all of his pieces away. Now g5, bishop to g3, of course, and now h5. He could, of course, he can either play h3, h4, or he can put the bishop on, let's say, c7. If he wishes to. I think the best move is bishop to c7 actually. He chose h4 in this position, but now I just get to force his knight away as well, and now g4 and knight here. Now in this position I had a long think, and even though I prepared the move e5 in advance, and I actually had this exact position on my board, and I know that e5 is okay, I wanted to try something different, and I played the move bishop to h6. Now, I'm sorry. I don't know whether that move is a mistake, but it might actually be worse than e5. I'm not sure. The problem with the move e5, which I was calculating, was, let's say, e5, then e4. And he might get a chance to open up the center to his advantage. Now, this was my calculation. Okay, here. And now I could play knight here, and I could have a bigger center than he does. But for some reason, I didn't want to go into this position. And I played, after knight to d2, I played bishop to h6. And the point of this variation is that if he ever plays the move e4 now, let's say he plays e4 here, I can just take the knight and then win a pawn. So this indirectly prevents the move e4. So after bishop to h6, I was actually threatening the move e5 without him being able to play the move e4. He of course played b5 here, and now I played e5 because e4 isn't possible. He played e3 and knight to e7. Now my plan was either to castle or to play king to f7. Now the problem with castling in some positions is that if his rook ever gets to the a7 square or the b7 square, then my knight is hanging. And if my king is on f7, my e7 knight is defended. So I actually wanted to keep my knight defended. Here he took on c6, b takes c6, b takes c6, and b4. Of course, e takes d4, e takes d4, king to f7, and now my plan was basically over. The only move I wanted to make was rook h to e8, and then start attacking him. And I was pretty happy with my position. This wasn't exact preparation. I didn't have this exact position, but I had prepared ideas with rook to e8, king f7, bishop h6, and bishop to f5. So I had the pieces on these squares, so I was prepared for this still. He played b5 as expected, rook h to e8. Now I don't think he can ever take on c6 in this position, because knight takes c6 would be with check, and I would take the d4 pawn. So here he played king to d1, and I actually put this position on an engine because I thought that this was the problem, the worst move of the game, and I actually know that in this position I'm almost equal, and my next move just loses, and it's not obvious why immediately. Now let me explain my thoughts to you. Now the first thing I have to be worried about is, well, firstly my d5 pawn is hanging. If he takes and I recapture, he can take here, and then I will be forced to take on d4, and then my bishop is hanging, and my second bishop is hanging, etc. So that doesn't really work. The second thing is that if I ever capture, let's say I capture here, then I have two problems. Both my rooks and my king are forked, so that doesn't really work. So after, king to d1, I played bishop to e6. Now, okay, I tried to prevent all of that with the move bishop to e6. The first thing I was calculating was the move bishop to g6, because in many positions my bishop on f5 is in check as well, along with my king, so I definitely wanted to move my bishop away. Now the problem is that once I move my bishop from the f5 square, from this diagonal, then his bishop can come to the d3 square, which actually happened in the game. And the second thing is that my bishop is actually a huge liability on the e6 square, where I've put it, and it's open to all sorts of attacks now. The thing is that, let's say his knight gets here and he checks me here. He attacks me here. Now, if I had already moved my rook away, then the problem is that both my rook and my bishop are attacked. And if you can imagine his rook coming to e1, and his knight checking me here, attacking me here, that would mean that I would have to give up either an exchange or a piece. Checking me here, and my king has to move. That means that I lose my bishop if his rook is on e1. So these are all the things that I tried to calculate. I couldn't really see all the positions, but the move bishop to e6 seemed somewhat logical. The problem is that the move is ridiculous, of course. It creates too many weaknesses, it loses time, and as soon as here he took b takes c6, knight takes c6, and he played knight to b5. And I saw this position, and I saw that I was going to have to move my rook, so I played rook to h8 for some reason. Perhaps rook here would have been better, but I wanted to keep an option of putting my bishop on this diagonal just to be able to defend the d6 square. And here he played bishop to d3, and now I just wanted to throw up during the game. I was sure that I was losing, and I was very upset. And now I started to calculate some tricks. Now I didn't play this, but I wanted to play this. So let's say h6, attacking the knight, and let's say knight here, attacking my rook. I can then take here. He will take my rook. I can take here, and this will happen, or at least that's what I thought. But upon further calculation, I didn't like this variation for some reason. Let me just see why. Okay, so h6, knight here, knight takes here, bishop takes, king takes. Yeah, it doesn't work because it loses material. Knight here takes. Okay, now once he's yeah, it loses material because he can just take here. I think that's what I was calculating. No, but it's actually fine. It doesn't lose material. Black is up material. Okay, so let's calculate this again. Okay, so bishop to d3, a6, knight c7. Okay, what if he plays knight d6 check? Here, then does he have time to defend his pawn? Perhaps knight here would just defend everything. Perhaps, yeah, this is one idea, but let's see. a6, knight to c7, knight takes d4, rook takes, knight takes a8, bishop takes, king takes, knight b3 check, king to c3, knight takes. But you know what? He doesn't have to take my knight with his rook. He can just play this. And now I'm in trouble, I think. Okay, after knight to c7, how do I defend my knight? I don't think I can. Now here. Yeah, now, yeah. I think this is the reason. I think white wins the piece in this position if he doesn't recapture my knight. So I think this is why I decided not to do that. But I will see with an engine. So bishop to d3. Anyway, I didn't play h6. I played a much worse move. I just gave up my dark squared bishop because I started seeing some variations in which this tactic does work if I capture the knight immediately. So bishop takes d2. King takes d2, and now I was calculating the same variation again, but it actually doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So okay, this is what I was calculating. h6, knight here, knight takes here, 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 and once again this, and it doesn't work. And whatever I do, I just blunder a piece. So once again, it doesn't work, and I just gave up my bishop pair for not much. And another thing is that I started getting very worried about being checkmated or losing my bishop on e6. Okay, his next move is going to be rook to e1, and once he plays rook to e1, then any check here would be devastating. Let's just say I play a nothing move. Let's say I can't find the bad move. Okay, let's say this. So now rook to e1. Let's say I play another stupid move, knight here check. I have to keep defending my bishop. So let's say here. And after he plays this, I'm just losing material and the game. So this is what I was afraid of. So after king takes d2, I wanted to get rid of this weakness here. And now you can see that my rook is worse here. I removed it from e8. My bishop is ridiculous on e6, and my king is actually a liability on f7. Of course, if I move my king away to remove that tactical threat, then let's say I play this, he can just play this and win an exchange, of course, because I have to keep defending my bishop, so that doesn't work. So after king takes d2, I played knight to f8, which looks horrible, but I thought I have to keep defending my bishop. Here he played king to c3, just crushing me and taking up even more space. Bishop d7. And bishop d7 is just removing the bishop from the weak diagonal. Rook a6, and this is just over. Knight to e6. I tried to put some pressure on his d-pawn, and now a very nice move by my opponent, bishop to f5, and I almost held my hand out to resign, but I played on for a few more moves, which is perhaps a bit embarrassing. Now I have three possibilities. The first one, which I didn't play, is knight c takes d4, and after knight takes d4, knight takes c5. I, of course, lose material, but I lose material anyway. I lose a piece inevitably. So bishop f5, another possibility is knight e takes d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop takes d7, knight e2 check. And perhaps I could well, I can't survive, I just can't survive. And in the game I played knight takes c5, and now the thing I was calculating was bishop takes, and here, and I think I was going to play this, in which case I'm an exchange down, but that was the best case scenario. After knight takes c5, my opponent played knight to d6, and now after king g7, d takes c5, bishop takes f5, knight takes f5 check, king g6, rook c6, king f5, and I'm a piece down for a pawn, and this is just horrible. I tried on for a few more moves to find some perpetual checks with my rooks, but there's just no hope. This was my last trick, playing rook to g4, just trying to trap his king somehow, but he found a very nice and fast way to convert. In this position he took on f6, and I gave up. A very nice game by my opponent. He just humiliated me over the board and gave me a very instructive lesson on queenside attacks. And I hope I learned a lot from this game. I actually started analyzing the positions on Sunday already, and I'm going to work on that for a long time, until I feel comfortable in those lines. Okay, everybody, I'm finally going to continue my theory series. I'm going to publish a video on the Sicilian sometime tomorrow, and I hope to publish at least 3 to 4 theoretical videos a week. I made a publishing schedule, so I'm going to stick to it. I hope you got something from this one. As always, any questions, comments, very much appreciated. Give me your thoughts on this position, and stay tuned for more chess. See you later. Bye bye.